head, the rhythm calls. Stand up tall, we break the walls. Train it up, train it high. Next gen reaching for the sky. Push the limit, don't ask why. This is how we're born to fly.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Next Gen Training here on the Sparta HQ Network. I'm Mr. Bennett, joined with my partner tonight. My co-host is CBN Tech Talks, aka Black David, aka Bearball. Here with me tonight, our coach. He is actually coaching. He's got games tonight. Again, he teaches or he coaches fifth and sixth grade basketball. And games running over tonight. So if he does show up tonight, he's going to be very late to the show. But certainly appreciate David for hopping in last minute. Certainly to be of service tonight as we go over a very extensive topic tonight. I have a slide deck that I'm trying to load, and it's showing me that it's uploaded in the back. But there it is. Okay, cool. I didn't see it on the other side. Perfect. Certainly as you come in tonight, make sure you hit the like button as you come in. Really helps the algorithm. Also consider subscribing to the network. We've had some good growth in recent weeks, and we want to keep this thing going. But also just as important here is this new section that we're really trying to build. We want to change the format of the show where we drive content based on your questions. So if you see the email on the bottom, nextgentraining101@gmail.com. Send your questions and requests to us. And as we pull those questions, we want to be able to create content for shows, have Q&A shows where we take questions, especially if they're of a similar topic, and use that as the topic of discussion for the show. So certainly looking forward to, certainly your participation in that. And certainly we ask you to be a part of the show and really, share your thoughts and questions that you may have for myself and Coach, and even with David being on that, he has a father, he has teenage and adolescent children, so I'm sure he's got some wisdom he can certainly share in this space as well. But as always, we would like to check in with everybody, and we want to know, how are you doing with your pies, your physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual health? We take that very seriously on this show. And, so we want to check in with everybody, make sure all those areas of your life should be clicking. And so with me, things are, feeling pretty good. Health is right where, right where it needs to be, and training hard, intellectually growing every day, emotionally very good. And, spiritually, that kind of guides everything else, so physical, the spiritual health really helps me with my emotional and intellectual health, and then the physical, it all kind of cycles together. It's hard to have one without the other. If you're not feeling good physically, it's hard to feel good in all these other areas of your life. And what good is it? Yeah, you can have the body of a Greek god, but if your spiritual health isn't good, or if you're not doing well emotionally or intellectually, then that's not good either. So again, we seek folks to have a balanced perspective, a balanced life, a balanced approach in terms of how you do everything. And so we definitely want to foster that. But certainly check in with our my co-host tonight, brother David. How are you doing, sir? How are you doing with your pod, sir?
That's a good question. I've been trying to get back into working out as much as I can. Often I have my resistance band, which I will bring in an example, which I'm talking about in case people don't have weight. The type of resistance band you can use.
Hmm.
Put that on this right now is 100 pound resistance band. So I do curls, do some other workout. I do some stretching on the arm. I'm trying to refocus myself because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have any easy the past couple of months, so I'm trying to refocus, reground myself, make sure I stay positive, which is not easy, but as a father, I have to show the example regardless of what I go through. I gotta keep on pushing.
Hmm.
I'm trying to get back to reading my scripture. I used to be a heavy Bible nerd,
Hmm.
so I can compete with those who understand the scripture, but I'm trying to get back to doing the same thing. It's not easy, but I would tell anybody if you're going through something in life, take it one day at a time. Make sure you try your best, keep pushing as much as you can. If you don't succeed your goal, you try it again the next day. Keep on trying, keep on putting to your accomplish it. That I will tell you.
Awesome, awesome. And certainly for those who are coming in tonight, again, how are your pies? Certainly check in and make sure that you're doing well in that perspective. Um, because of the amount of data that we're showing tonight, David, if you can flip this just a bit, make the presentation a bit bigger. You can put us on the lower side. I really want to make sure that I really kind of drill on these perfect. And as we go through some of this content tonight, really big topic. As you saw the banner coming in, honestly, I didn't even see the banner like fully. Like when I saw it on my phone, the banner, but I didn't know what it was until I brought up just before the show, and I just saw the team that they had on there, and it was basically it looks like it was a woman a girls basketball team, but they seem to be special needs, and I didn't even think of that when we talk about the subject tonight. But I think it certainly goes to show again the importance of certainly youth sports, youth athletics, what it can do certainly for people of any background or situation. And I certainly that's the experience that I had growing up with youth sports. And again, at the capacity I was able to play it, I was never naturally gifted athletically. I didn't play organized sports until I was 14 years old. And and that was my I did track, did football 1 year, but I basketball for 3 years. And even then, I can honestly admit I was never very good at it. But I always will give deference to my coach at the time, Coach Frank Sipod of Highland Park High School. He allowed me to come on. I carried a clipboard for a year just because I wanted to be a part of the team. So I got to ride on the buses. I got to be part of the action. I got special access to things that other people didn't get access to, and he had pity on me. I was like Rudy on if you remember that movie Rudy. I was Rudy on his basketball team, and so I'll always be indebted to him for giving me that opportunity just to be a part of something. But I was thinking about what would have happened if I would have started or if I had the proper home environment where I could have started in athletics a lot at a younger age. What if I was able to start playing organized sports at 5, at 6 years old, like others?
Um,
Where could I have taken it? Because I got fairly decent when I got to college. I dunked the basketball for the first time when I got into college. So I was definitely one of those late bloomers when it came to things. But again, what if you had the opportunities to put your kids into a situation where they could really excel in sports? But again, as we know, though, there's a cost to those things. So part of the conversation tonight, we're going to be dealing with youth athletics, certainly from as early as age 5, all the way up through high school, the different avenues that you can go to in order to explore youth athletics, but then also keep in mind that there's costs involved when it comes to that, and you have to be very mindful of those costs. And some parents take it to extremes. You have to start asking yourself as a parent some questions. Are you basically trying to live vicariously through your kids by putting them into all these different sports and playing for these clinics and everything for them to participate, or are you generally interested in them, actually, their own individual development, or is it about you being able to do something that you didn't get a chance to do as a kid? And I've seen a lot of parents who certainly it's easy to kind of fall into that trap. Certainly, especially once you start getting some money. Once if you might not have been great athletically, but you were smart enough to do well professionally. and now you want to, certainly share some of that with your kids. And I can understand that drive and desire to do so, but those are things that you need to be mindful of. But what about you, David? Did your kids participate in a lot of sports? Did you enroll them in a lot of things? Or like you said, you're still raising kids. So
I was.
what's the current menu of sports for them?
Let me say this. The only person in my family that got into sport was actually my son. He
Hmm.
joined the junior varsity basketball team and tried to get into the junior varsity basketball team. But before that, I was always trying to push him since he was in elementary school to get in fitness because if I really had to look at my background, just like you, I started playing organized sport when I was in high school, but was most like in junior high school.
Hmm.
I got into soccer. Then from there, I got into the other sport until I got to do mixed martial, but was actually martial arts to karate. And when I learned getting into martial art, I didn't realize it would end up being a core foundation of my conditioning and my strengthening. Because for one, I will be considered to be the sport jock or the sport junkie. I've tried all type of sport. I've tried tennis. I tried basketball. I've tried volleyball. I've done soccer. I've done powerlifting. I've done bowling. I did track and field. I actually did a 200 meter. That was not easy. I couldn't do the 400 because I had to train for that one. I wasn't going to do the 100 meter without back in my country because I don't want to, how you want to say, catch a Charlie horse on your calf muscle. I've seen people who are not trained properly, and I was one of those people I want to see what I can master. And looking at my son, he got into basketball. I'm like, okay, good, but he wanted to play soccer more than basketball. But based on what the school provided, it's always the challenge. Like you just said, it's a course.
Hmm.
And I think the course, it depends on where you live. Because unless you are a person who has traveled around the country through your job and you see different environments, you see different, you start to realize it's always based on the jurisdiction you live. New York City, either you go to a charter school or elementary school, it depends what the school provide for the kid to enroll in. If you were to move your kid out of the city, the urban, get into suburban area, like say, I don't know, not like New Jersey, but somewhere far away from the city, whereby they have a much bigger facility, they'll have more options to choose. Either want to be in baseball, or they will be in basketball, or they're going to be in football, whatever they have available. Yes, the school have a particular budget, but it also take a cost. You got to sign the form. Maybe you got to do some fundraising, so to speak. It's all boiled down because when you think about it, then as the parents, that's something you have to always ask yourself. Are you available to support your child in that pathway? So when I was my son age, I was playing soccer in high school. None of my parents came to see my game.
Hmm.
Now, even though I took it to the heart, but I don't think people understand a parent support in their child's sport journey says a lot. But what you mentioned earlier in the show, that also can be critical if you see the parent investing way too much money or they're pushing their kids.
Hmm.
Because ironically, I'm not sure she's a single mom. I don't know her name, but her kid used to go to the same elementary school my son used to go to. I told my daughter, and I watched this woman push her twin sons into football camp. And after that, tennis camp. And I was wondering, is she no disrespect? I know you picked on these type of things. Is she trying to get a meal ticket?
Hmm.
I know you
Yeah,
understand what I mean by the
that
right
happens.
term. And this topic, I try to stay away from the topic because it's not simple to touch upon. Don't get me wrong, I love sport. It helped build a child, fundamentally speaking. It built a level of discipline, a level of accountability, responsibility. It built all type of skill mechanism that not everybody can find in a classroom, right? But
Right.
on the flip side, depending on how you're pushing your kid or how you're supporting a kid, it may deter them from learning those skills. If I'm wrong,
Mm.
because I
Well,
know. Go ahead.
well, I think that a couple things that you said. Um, I think it certainly helped them develop some skills, but I think it also can be limiting as well. Because I know parents, for example, who've had their kids in some sort of, and again, this topic tonight, generally speaking, you could apply to a lot of different areas. It could be sports, it could be dance. Like I got daughters, so they all were in dance.
Oh,
So it's kind of a similar kind of grind as far as the costs and everything involved. So you can apply this in a lot of areas. Um, I've seen a lot of parents who had their kids basically in sports, travel teams, the whole line, all the way up from as young as they could all the way up through high school. And I still saw, even though they kind of had that team dynamic going, they still were lacking certain fundamentals because there's other avenues in life besides sports. There's certain things that you learn, for example, from having a job. I was real big on that. I knew that my daughters weren't going to be the next ballerinas or the next, Dancing with the Stars or whatever. So I think I figured that out pretty early. But the one thing that I'm always pushing is, certainly when my daughters turn 16, my wife and I told them, okay, this is kind of when the gravy train stops a bit. And if you want additional money, you're going to have to get a job. So unless you want to wear Skechers and Old Navy clothes, if you want the more high end clothes, you want Nikes, you want certain brands, you're going to have to buy those. And I think those type of lessons that they got are just as important as the ones that they were learning in any dance class or any sporting event. And sports. I've always said, for 99% of people, sports is a luxury and a privilege. But working, having a job, those are now you're talking life essentials. Those are things that are going to carry with you a lot. Now, again, it doesn't mean that sports doesn't inform, but I've seen a lot of cases where sports has been so dominant in the kid's life that they know very little of anything else. And so, because again, a sport environment is controlled, you're typically playing with a team where people are selected. Whereas in a work environment, you're going to be working with people who may not come from or share your background at all. And you're going to have to learn how to deal with those sort of things. So, again, sports is a much more controlled environment than working. And so I've always been big on making sure that kids can learn early enough how to handle money, how to make money, the pride that you take in earning your own money. I think those are just as important, unless, again, if your kid is going to be one of those 1% or less than 1%. In fact, we're going to show some slides of that, how rare it is that kids, like depicted in these pictures, get to play at college level, let alone professional level. And so those are things that we have to, certainly take in mind. Thank you for the adjustment. Those are things we have to take in mind as we certainly go through this. But again, I don't want to limit or be negative about sports. Again, there's positive aspects. Here, just this one slide here: 64% of executives noted that sports help them with their career development. Again, teamwork, team building, those kind of skills are essential in corporate just as they are on a team. You got to have those together. 73% of girls and 59% of boys who played high school sports are expected to graduate from college. Now, again, that number could be a little bit skewed because, again, if you're the nerd, if you're the smart one or whatever, I would think your percentage chance of graduating from college would be higher than those. But and again, I've seen a lot of players get scholarships, but again, were they in school because of their academics, or were they there simply because they could dribble a basketball or run a
now
football?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that middle part right there is very, very critical because I think you and I both know this very well. depending on what school you're going to, they always say if you play a particular sport, you might get a scholarship to the college of your choice. So
Hmm.
they think that that sport will be the doorway. But we knew for the past maybe what 5 or 7 years, they have been a thing about how they recruit high school students to particular college where there's money involved,
Hmm.
where there was girls involved on the boys' side of thing. On the girls' side, it's a little bit different. It's more of a level of competition, trying to find the right talent. It became a money marketing bit until recently they changed the dynamic whereby now, if you were recruited for a particular school to play sport, either be basketball, football, or soccer, you have to get paid now, unlike all the yesteryear in the NCAA division whatsoever.
Hmm.
That middle part right there, I had paid attention to that middle part for almost a good 2 to 3 decades because we've been to high school here. We understand the dynamic and the change of it. Some people go through the college, some people don't. Some people get scouted. When you get scouted, they will offer the scout because they want their particular skills whatsoever. So when they say 23%, the only thing that comes to my mind, what the most common sport that most girls get recruited for in college, that would more likely be basketball and soccer.
Hmm.
Unless it's gymnastic, and it's gymnastic.
Well, we're gonna cover some of that as
Okay.
well, as terms of the sports where participation is high or the highest, and also your what sports at those levels you have the best shot of gaining some sort of either acceptance on or even scholarships from. We're going to cover that as well. But the last point again, $68 billion saved medical costs thanks to physical activity, but that's a given. You don't necessarily have to be part of a sports team for that. I mean, you can, work out, hit a gym, push ups, sit ups. Those are things there. But again, the idea of being physically active, whether you be on a personal level or in a sports context, certainly there are benefits to that. So I don't want to, again, negate the positive contributions that sports has to people and what it's done for people in terms of the life lessons that have been taught. Another slide here that we have is where, oops, I think I skipped one. Go back. Here we go. So this slide here, and I think the time period was probably around the pandemic, when you had whole seasons suspended because of that, where you couldn't have it, what have you, and the transition that took place. So for people who didn't have, the sport or the activity, again, they replaced that physical time with screen time, and that was also around the time when you had again Fortnite, TikTok, Instagram. A lot of the social media went up because again, if you can't participate, then what are you going to do? Negative impact on mental health and happiness, 63%, lost interest in practicing and playing their favorite sports, 25%, and lost desire to return to the sport when allowed to do so. Is probably the fewest. But again, you're going to again, without that interaction. That's why a lot of kids, in fact, I even saw with my oldest daughter, because she was the last one in high school. She spent her last 2 years in high school through the pandemic. And I could definitely tell you it definitely had an impact on her personal and interpersonal development. It took her a while to do that. In fact, I think she's still kind of catching up. She's doing a lot better now, but I always thought she was kind of 2 years behind mentally, because not necessarily intellectually, not to say that she wasn't smart, but just the social skills weren't there because they were not in school. And so compound on that, if you do enjoy playing a sport, but you can't play the sport because again of the lockdowns and all the situations that were going on, clearly not the fault of the students, but here you go where again, and we talk about the influence of social media and how social media blew up, especially during that 5 year period where again people replace the physical activity for again the games and the social media content and streaming and all those kind of things. So again, not having these things can certainly have a detrimental effect on all of us, but also for a kid, especially if you're in high school, adolescence and whatnot, you're going through that, to have some of your best years taken away from you because of that, those can certainly have some major impact on your overall development. But did you see this with your kids as far as the when you said your son was in basketball, but during the lockdown, I mean, did that
During the
change?
lockdown, I would say
Yeah.
that the only 2 or 3 I have to on heavy with Fortnite and Roblox. Even though right now they're actually a class action lawsuit against those two particular applications, they had a severe impact on the youth as well. TikTok was a thing at the time, but not wasn't that heavy. Because I know during the pandemic, everybody's on TikTok doing all type of things, doing all type of weird challenge whatsoever. That was really getting out of hand. But as I was looking at the chart and I started to think about it, I'm like, that do have some kind of impact, but like also like I said, it's also fall on location. Like, how would I put this? I know during the pandemic, depending on where you are, you were either forced to stay indoor, you not to go out, whatever. But if you don't know type of place with a complex, we had an indoor gym. Some people don't utilize the prescription description and they still go to the gym, still get their workout and come back home, or like they have an indoor gym. But not everybody have the privilege. So when I look at these numbers, I was like, wow, that is a huge percentage because physical education is very critical of, I will say, helping up balancing your emotion and how things go through your mind. But when you look at all the games they play, Roblox and Fortnite are the top two.
Mhm.
TikTok will be number three. Google Meet, Messenger, Zoom. That's more like no one want to make phone calls, but rather just do that communicate or communicating.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
for
that would be
sure.
the case. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And just keep in mind the importance, I believe, of youth sports because you talk about gym class. Gym is different than what it used to be back in the day. Gym was there for you to exert physically. You don't see a lot of that activity in gym classes anymore. I mean, when I grew up, they still had kind of like a militaristic type of portion of gym. Like so you can go back and watch those videos of gym classes from the 1960s and
I
you see them
remember.
doing things because again, the whole idea was you're preparing these boys because they may have to go to boot camp in a couple years. If you're 16, if you're drafted, you're going to be in boot camp at 18, especially during the 60s during the Vietnam War.
Yeah, but
So again, the whole thrust was different back then. But I remember enough to where we would be lined up like soldiers. We would have to do push-ups and jumping jacks and sit-ups and climb things and chin-ups and things of that nature. But now gym became just recreation.
and I think that happened due to a policy change because I've seen the 60 video that you were talking about, and I was like, wait a minute. We don't do that in the 80s. It was like we did some of it, but not much. And I noticed it happened a slow decline. What kind of activity do in the gym on the soil, but I also find it unusual outside the American soil. They put that same fundamental even more. So I was trying to ask, what stopped them here? What would be the reason behind it?
Mhm.
Because I know when it comes to boys, when it comes to fit and everything, they have a way of self motivating themselves or to make it to a challenge, whereby who could do the more push or who could do the more squat, who could,
Mhm.
and male ego parents, when you see your son competing among their peer about who can just leave them alone, stay out of their way, let them be. Mr. Bennett don't have son, he had daughters, so it's a different ball. When you see bragging, right, all that little testosterone flexing, let them have that moment, let them flex, because at least they let it out. But these days, I'll be honest, I don't see a lot of youth so more, oh, I mean, I could do 100 push. No, I remember I was trying to do that myself. So you brought it up, I'm thinking like, it had to be a policy change or something. Because it can't just stop overnight unless more is not pushing for it.
Mhm.
Or the gym coach or the gym teacher not emphasizing on it enough. It had to be something that took place that switched the cycle of it.
Mhm.
I'm just guessing because even I paid attention. I was just wondering how come we're not doing what we do, like you
Well,
said.
again, I've said this on other shows. I mean, war or the threat of war has always been a motivator in terms of how people move. You move out of necessity, not necessarily out of luxury. And typically, the whole idea when you get luxury, when it's peaceful, you kind of get fat and lazy, and there's no motivation. And so, the fact that we weren't preparing young people for the potential of that activity, I think it certainly hurt in terms of their physical development. Or again, the idea of sports became, rather than the military, sports became the regimented or the structured environment that young people gravitated towards. And again, when you had the pandemic, when that got taken away, a lot of them gravitated towards, again, the online sources. So again, like I said, there is value in, like I said, youth sports, youth athletics, but there's also a cost that's involved. So I really want to kind of get into this and help people to kind of navigate what are some of these costs that are involved. So again, we talk about youth sports, the AAU. All right. So again, from this study that was done, by these folks, they're actually out of New Jersey. William Patterson, my brother actually went there for a couple of years. William Patterson in New Jersey, but just from the extract, 60 million. 60 million United States school-age children and 75% of American families participate in organized sports annually. American families spend around $40 billion a year on youth sports, and this amount is expected to exceed $75 billion by 2026. This expenditure represents 7% of their household spending. The average family spends between $700 and $1,000, and I think that's certainly on the low side. Because I know, especially for certain sports like baseball, you'll spend $300-400 on a bat, a youth bat. Because I know guys who've shown me that. So certainly that's there. And again, so with spending with spending increasing by more than 50% in the past decade. So again, there's definitely a lot of money in youth sports, and I think that certainly generated a lot of what we're seeing with AAU and with other travel team organizations. You're certainly starting to see a lot more of that. But by contrast, now again, this is the era that I grew up in, right? School sports, right? These are usually the most affordable option. They're often publicly funded. So again, if you want to know where a lot of your tax dollars go, especially your state taxes, they fund your municipalities. And with that is school age activities, your gym classes, your sports teams, your uniforms. All of that basically comes from the taxpayers in a particular community. The primary costs are usually for personal equipment, shoes, and gloves. So again, when I played basketball, the only thing I had to buy was my own basketball shoes. But even then, the coach was like, there's only certain shoes you could wear. So he kind of limited your options or whatnot. And basic team gear, if not provided, the focus is often on local competition, minimizing travel and associated costs. Again, you typically play people within your region, your county, those sort of things. So again, that's the era I pretty much grew up in. Unless you were very, very good. I mean, like thinking that you were going to play on the next level. AAU, even though that was around, I didn't know too many guys who played AAU. There might have been some summer camps that guys went to play on a higher level if they wanted better competition. But really, there was you can go ahead. So there was a lot of basically high school was like the main thing. You did have some camps and whatnot, but other than that, people relied on high school sports as their main vehicle. But then with AAU getting more powerful over the years, and then the introduction of private travel teams, we'll talk about that in a bit. Now, yes, you have more options, but with that option oftentimes comes more cost. But typically playing school sports is usually the cheaper option. So again, just comparing school sports versus AAU versus travel team. And again, an AAU team technically can also be a travel team, but there are some differences between the two, with travel teams sometimes being the highest. Okay, so again, an AAU team can vary from $500 to $5,000 a year, especially if you talked about the travel that's involved. Because again, with school sports, you're typically playing people within your county or your district. But with AAU and travel, you could be all over the country. And again, I know guys who've had their kids in baseball and basketball. You're playing in tournaments all over the country. And so with that, you have to factor in the cost of airfare, the cost of lodging, and all those things in order to participate in these programs. And you get fewer options. Like I said, basic equipment comes with the schools, but when you're with these teams, everything is a la carte, everything. And we'll talk about what some of those basic costs and breakdowns are. But again, hopefully this is information that if you're deciding, well, what should I put my kid in? Again, I think ultimately you have to really have an honest assessment and look at what your skills and abilities and the interests of your kid is. Because a lot of parents, they want to put their kids in everything. And at the end of the day, is it really going to be worth it? And that's how we'll certainly end tonight as well. But for example, AAU, it's a big organization, founded in 1888 for over 40 plus sports that are sanctioned by AAU, from kids to adults, right? So like if you follow bodybuilding used to be an AAU sport back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s before the IFBB came around, and NABA and these other organizations, AAU powerlifting and weightlifting, a lot of that was part of it. But these are sports that are sanctioned. So to work with the AAU, you have to buy membership into the AAU. You have to, if you want to form a team, you have to fill out an application with AAU. You have to be approved by AAU, and you get to participate in AAU sponsored tournaments, but you also have to go by AAU rules, okay? Amateur Athletic Association. And so again, so they're one of the oldest and one of the largest and fairly respected bodies when it comes to youth sports and athletics. But again, they have programs that go all the way well into adulthood as well. Just to kind of give you a difference between, again, travel sports and AAU. So again, in the 80s, I would say in the 70s and the 80s is where AAU really started to ascend. But then you started to have something else that came off of that. Then you started to have the development of these travel teams. And these travel teams were oftentimes funded by the big sneaker manufacturers, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour. Plus, you had people putting private money. Again, AAU was basically funded and supported by memberships and participation in fees and dues. But then the sneaker companies also started to get involved, and as well as former athletes and players started to get involved in these travel teams, these private organizations that really started to compete with AAU. So when Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour came in, it really started to separate, because now these organizations, they started pouring money into it. So if you played for one of those sneaker organizations, guess what? You got free sneakers. Because like I said, even in high school, we had to get our own sneakers. But when the travel teams, the private travel teams came in, a lot of the equipment was supplied by these companies. And so that also then had a draw on the elite players. And really they started to separate out. So it says, while the talent that competes at the AAU level continues to impress, these super teams dominate travel basketball, because again, the money that's being poured in. And it's virtually an unregulated industry. And what's also happening is those with money, because again, like I said on the previous slide, you could spend well over $10,000 on these private travel teams. And so where sports used to be a vehicle for those who were poor. So if you grew up in the hood, if you grew up in the ghetto, sports was oftentimes your ticket out of the ghetto. But now with the costs that are involved to be part of these travel teams and even AAU, a lot of poor families are being priced out of it. Or if you do get poor kids or people from impoverished backgrounds in, someone's paying. So, David, you mentioned earlier about, depending on where you live, not necessarily. Because if you're good, you have a lot of these private, and so even when I say high school, I have to make a distinction. You have the public schools that's supported by public dollars, but then you also have private and parochial schools that are oftentimes subsidized with private money. And so you would have schools now in New Jersey for years, for decades. St. Anthony's in Jersey City was arguably one of the top basketball programs in the country. Now, St. Anthony's is a very small Catholic school. I think their student bodies might be like 700. But people start to ask, how is it that St. Anthony's is able to get some of the best players in the country in high school to play for them year after year? Dan Hurley, who was the father of Bobby Hurley, and I think there's another Hurley that he's the coach for UConn. Again, very prominent in that basketball scene in New Jersey. And so now you start to get into, again, where are people getting this money? A lot of these Catholic schools and a lot of these private schools were essentially giving these kids scholarships to go to their school. Whether or not they had the academics to even be there or not, a lot of money was given out. So again, if you're a good or great player, money will find you. And people will throw money at you in order to participate in their programs. But if you're in high school, that's going to be probably the fairest that judges on merit. But again, you're going to be limited to playing within your county or your district. But if you want to play against the best in the world, or it's just see how elite your skill set is, well, then there's these other options, the AAU primarily, and then you also have the private travel teams. And so those are things that you have to be that you need to be mindful of. The last point here: finally, joining AAU requires additional fees for parents and coaches, while travel basketball organizations outside of AAU do not incur those fees. Although the fees are minor, starting at $16 a player, these can add up. Add extra expenses to budget-conscious parents. Playing non-AAU tournaments can reduce costs for travel basketball, but again, it depends on what it is. In a lot of cases, it's a lot more than AAU, especially when you got the sons of NBA players. They're gonna get the looks, they're gonna get the love, oftentimes from these groups. When they come in there. So again, there's levels to this that you could participate in. So you have high school or school, just public school, but then you have the difference between private schools and public schools. You have AAU in similar organizations, and then you have the private travel teams, the ones that are sponsored by, like I said, sneaker and apparel companies that get young people into sports. So all these are things that, when contemplating where to go, certainly these are things that you have to consider. What kind of commitment, what kind of money that you want to put into these things. Going here, some of the cons of it, of playing on some of these AAU and travel teams. Some of the things that are getting too many games and not enough practice. Again, a lot of these guys are super teams, just like kids are not necessarily being coached. If I get the best players or the most physically gifted players, more times than not, they're going to beat teams that you might be more skilled, but they don't have the physical abilities. And so a lot of times what happens is, you're on these teams, you're playing with these great players and whatnot, but again, they prioritize winning over development, player development. Coaches may lack certain certifications and skills, and teams may sometimes suffer from star-driven environments. Again, because, this player, former NBA's son, is on the team with this former NBA's son, and they just have these teams, and, they're naturally gifted. They're at 14 years old. They're already 6'5", 6'6", and still growing. And they just dominate everybody else. But again, when you're dominating like that and you're winning Nike's tournament or whatever, or AAU's tournament, are you a better player? Because what happens when you do face stiffer competition? Are you being taught the fundamentals of the game? Or is it all about the money? Is it all about being seen? Is it always about the notoriety versus, are you being taught to be a great basketball player? David, any comments on this before I go? I got a slides to get through, but I just wanted to kind of talk to a few and then get
I
to them. Any
never thought
comments
about
for
I never thought about this part and the part of the coach may lack certification or experience. That one I noticed a lot in the urban city area. I don't know if this one makes sense to you, but I'm not calling no name. To have a female coach in a male basketball team, I don't know how that would work.
Mm.
It's not just not finding the right coach. Are you able to recruit the right one? That's
Yeah,
the
because
critical.
again, to sponsor an AAU team, all you need is basically to register and follow the rules. Whether or not you're a good coach or not, that's not part of the criteria. So again, it's a membership-based organization where people sign up to be a part of it, and you got to abide by their you have to abide by their guidelines. But again, but these super teams and these travel teams with these players, are you getting better? Is an issue that people really have to say, what's going to be best for my son or daughter playing for one of these teams or playing for the local schools or whatever. What's going to put my child in the best position to be a better player, or like I said, if that's not going to be the future that you see for your son or daughter, then again, isn't high school sports enough? you know so again, these are questions that you have to ask yourself, because again, it gets more expensive as these things go on. Now, there is another association called the Junior NBA, okay, kind of put together by a lot of NBA players, former players, that they tend to focus more on the fundamentals. But again, you got to pay for that. So again, for the practices that they sell off is $215 per player for an 8-week session. But then there's also private coaching, which can be, depending on your coaching experience, it could be $30 to $50 an hour. If for the elite coaches, they want $60 to $90 an hour. Again, better instruction, but again, it's going to cost you. And how much are you willing to spend? How much are you willing to invest in for your kids' development? I think a lot of that is also going to depend on, again, where you honestly, if you can get an honest assessment of where your child is in that development process. But this can start at age, as you can see, it can start with the rookies. It can start at age 5 or 6. It goes all the way up to age 18. So again, depending on, you can start these up. I'm not going to make a lot of distinctions between the ages, but each tier has different levels and arguably different money as you go up in tier. So again, let's talk about football a little bit. So we talked about the basketball. Here's some of the football organizations. So again, you got Pop Warner. Again, is for ages that has tackle football, cheerleading, and whatnot. I know guys who have their daughters in the cheerleading and their son is playing football or baseball. Ages 5 to 15. You have American Youth Football. Again, they have different divisions. They have tackle. They have 7-on-7. They have flag football, NFL flag, I-9 Sports. So again, there's a lot of different organizations that are out there. And just to compare, for example, Pop Warner, the way Pop Warner runs. So again, these are the age basis. So you can start playing Pop Warner, what they call Pee Wee football, at ages 9 through 12, but you can start as early as 5 years old. So they got the tiny mites, ages 5, 6, and 7. Now, the thing that's different with Pop Warner versus the other groups and organizations is that for them, they have weight limits. So again, as you see on the bottom there, depending on your age, there's also a weight criteria. If you're way too much, then you may need to go. They may see about how you can play for another one of those divisions. But again, Pop Warner football costs vary by program, but typically range from $75 to over $500 a season. Again, that depends on the equipment that you have to buy, or just the organizers themselves. If the organizer has a reputation, there's no limit in terms of what you can charge to be a member or participate in the program. These fees cover registration, equipment, uniforms, other program expenses. For example, flag football may cost $150 to $325, while tackle football can go from $175 to $500. Again, a lot of different ages there. But again, they typically have weight limits, especially for the tackle football associated with it. You don't need a 150-pound kid pancaking a 50-pound kid. So again, you got to make sure that there's some rules in place because you can have some pretty big kids, but again, goes all the way up to age 15. Then once you go from there, then more than likely you're going to be playing for like your high school varsity football team versus versus being part of the Pop Warner. But certainly they have weight limits, and then you have for the cheerleader the same thing. They have different based on your age, if you want to do cheerleader or dance, which is big competition. Like I said, I know someone, they go all over the country. They go to Florida, they go to all over to have their girls to participate in these cheerleading competitions. It's big money and big business. Again, it's very similar. $175 to $500 per person, but then you got to pay for again equipment, additional experience like spirit packs, custom bows, potential travel out of town, also pictures. That's a big thing with a lot of these groups. Also, there's charges for pictures. Everything has a cost. So these are the ages. So again, with the dance, you can go from ages as early as age 3 all the way up to age 18. You can be part of this sort of you can be a part of this sort of group. So again, so I'm talking about sports generally, but I'm using these specifically. But again, you can apply this to any sport that either Pop Warner or AAU or any other sport governs. It's going to be very similar. They're going to have age brackets depending on your for your age, and some also have different skill levels depending on your kid. So again, tackle football, versus flag. Again, the more talented players, they may be pushed into tackle football because there's not a lot of money in flag football at later ages. So again, just be mindful of the costs. Another one here. This is another group. Okay, American Youth Football. They said they're one of the larger organizations. Again, the difference between them and the Pop Warner is that they don't have weight limits. So you can be as big if your 10-year-old is 200 pounds, he can play. On Pop Warner, he's not going to be able to play. So again, those are things that you got to be mindful of. Again, American Youth Football costs can vary. It says the typical annual spending is around $581 for tackle football programs, according to a 2022 report. Local program fees range from $100 to $500. Again, uniforms, spirit packs, and just all kinds of things that you have to buy. If you were in martial arts, for example, you would have to pay for karate gis and uniforms and all those kind of things too. Again, these are just costs that you have to be mindful of, certainly as you go through it. But again, they start at age 6 and they go all the way up to age 15, and then again, once you're 15 and older, again, then you go to high school, and you're able to play certainly at that level. All right. So again, just to break down again some of these costs, what are the things that you're playing for? So again, if you talk about youth sports, okay, so again, football, baseball, track, wrestling, all those different things. Again, there's registration fees, equipment, gear, additional costs like again, team fees, pictures, packages, or local competition registrations, program specific inclusions like camp fees, insurance. Again, the thing with this also is that different groups are able to sort of make up their own rules in terms of what needs to be bought and what doesn't. And again, if you're doing the travel thing, if you're doing AAU, or if you're doing travel, period, again, travel costs, plane fares, right? Hotel costs, food on the road. Again, parents who are like dedicated to this. My kids, one of my daughters, she ran track for a couple of years, and it's a big commitment. I mean, first of all, you have to feel all day. I mean, we went to some of the local meets in my town. You're there all day, 8 a.m. in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, and your kid may run in 2 races. But because the team is there, you got to be there all day. So people are just camping out. They put up tents. They bring food. They're just chilling for the day. It's like the whole weekend is dedicated to track and field. And that's just for the local stuff. If you have to travel, it's the same thing. but to support their kids, they put, they add these expenses for dance and cheer. Again, very similar: registration fees, uniforms, spirit packs, like I said, socks, bows, and accessories, competition fees. Again, especially if you're in a dance competition, yeah, you have to pay money to get into these competitions, right? Out of pocket expenses, choreography and music, travel. Again, all of those things you got to keep in mind. So let's get into a breakdown of some of these fees and what we're really talking about. So again, on average, all right. So um, typically, you see these costs year to year. They've been going up dramatically year to year. Right, every year there's been an increase. So again, team registrations, uniforms, travel and lodging, lessons and instruction. That's outside of the teams. If you want private coaching, that can really shoot up. Camps and athletic schools, other expenses. Again, you could be spending over $1,000 a year. Now, for some, it's a drop in the bucket for them to do that, and they don't mind doing that. For others, like I said, sports used to be for the poorer classes. Sports used to be the way you used to be able to get out. Now, maybe not as much because of the incurred expenses that you have to pay. And again, I would even still say, even with a lot of those are cheap, especially for baseball. That is cheap compared to the uniforms, the bats. Like I said, a friend of mine, he's got his son like bats. Each bat's like $200-$300 per bat. And when his kid grows up, he needs a bigger bat. And so, it's constant. You're always spending money, certainly in the endeavor. If you look at again, um, the cost of each sport. So I think David, you asked this question earlier when it comes to uh, where the money goes or who spends the most money. So track and field actually is one of the cheapest sports to get into because basically it's the uniform and it's the cleats and whatnot to get in. But ice hockey, again, the equipment that you have to buy. Again, ice hockey is not available in every state, especially in warmer states. It's not available always. Field hockey is expensive. Gymnastics, some of these more elite sports, the cost can really kind of grow up. You know, as you go on. So that's why you see again basketball and whatnot. Again, some of the more inner city, some of the more rural sports is where you see a lot more participation. But again, a lot of these programs like gymnastics and field hockey and ice hockey, again, more expensive in the suburbs, not necessarily in the inner cities. And typically, those populations also tend to be a bit, from a racial perspective, folks you tend to be a bit lighter. I'll just I'll just say that much. Certainly more European in their look. Just want to give a shout out to again Mariana. She's in the build tonight. Appreciate you being here, as well as Craig in the build tonight. Again, appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being here as well. Moving on. Again, costs. I mean, this isn't like I said for some. If you got money like that, it's a drop in the bucket. For some other people, 57% worried that sports will cost more, 42% stress in terms of how they pay, 30% will need some financial assistance. So I know some friends of ours, they've had to take on an extra job, work overtime, work two jobs just to pay for their kid to be part of the team. I think even Russell Wilson, I think his dad, Russell Wilson, NFL quarterback, I think his dad worked extra or his mom worked extra jobs just to make sure that he could participate in all the football camps and everything that was going on. And 85% plan to shop with brands who support youth sports. Again, that's why I get Nike and Under Armour and Adidas. That's why a lot of those programs are, certainly are there when it comes to, the cost of it. But I think we got Sparta in the build tonight. How you doing, sir?
Yo, my man, how we doing tonight?
I'm just going through, man. I mean, it's a racket at the
Yeah.
at
So
the end
I
of
want
the
to
day.
jump on here for a minute because I kind of want
Sure.
to touch base a couple of things you were talking about.
Mhm.
So with the martial art community that I can speak very, very well about is it's a very expensive sport. I'm not gonna lie to you. So people don't understand how much the first year I always used to quote my parents between 5 to 1,000 on the low end. And I'm not talking about tournaments, gear wise.
Mhm.
So it depends on the level of the gear you want to get. Gi. All right, you can go with a $20 gi or $150 gi. For young kids, I don't recommend 150 because like you might get a growth spurt. You're not always going to be 3 foot. You got growth spurt. You're going to grow right out of it.
Right.
So that's one. Second, the sparring gear, you don't want to go for a P1 or P2. You want to go for that's a basic one. Very simple, 50, 60 bucks. But if you hit the P levels, P1, P2, P3, and up to P5, I use P5. That can run you about, it really depends on Central. That's usually the normal provider of martial art equipment.
Right.
They will go about, I want to say, the price have changed so much. I paid about $300 for my gear, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, it's a good gear. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a very, very good gear. But is it worth the price tag for the kids? No, unfortunately. I will say that right now. It's way overpriced for kids because they're going to grow out of it. They're going to a P1 basic gear. You're looking at, I want to say about a year, 2 years into before you need to replace it because that stuff gets beat up pretty bad. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So now let's talk about tournaments for a second here.
Yeah.
You have to pay for tournaments. So
does the school pay and you just reimburse the school, or every participant pays directly?
Every parent has to pay.
Okay.
Like, for example, you had $3, correct? Am I right? Remembering correctly?
3 daughters, yeah.
Okay. So let's say your $3 were into martial arts. I was Sensei Pete, okay? So I will start announcing during my classes that tournaments coming up, blah, 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 whatever. I'll hang out flyers to you guys to understand where the location is, the time is, and how much per event is. So usually 30 to 50 bucks will get you in a admission event, meaning you only get one event, from sparring to katas to weapon katas. All right. Now, team katas and team kata weapons, that's a whole different ball game now we're talking about. So you usually get one when dimension. Now, anything in addition, it depends on the tournament. It could be $10, it could be $30, it could be $50. It really depends on a high level tournament it is.
Right.
Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it does. Now, I guess the question that I have, is it required
No.
that you participate in a tournament? Because I mean, what if I just want my kid in martial arts because I want him to learn self-defense, and so obviously the skill sets that you learn and the sparring and whatnot, but I don't necessarily want to get on the tournament circuit. Was that optional, or did you have to?
It's optional. I would never make anybody go to a tournament out there forcible, if that makes sense. Now, if you want to go as a specialist just to support the school, that's cheap. $10 to get in the door.
Right.
And I had a lot of people who do that. Like one of my students said, "Listen, since I don't feel like doing this, like, don't have to go, dude. You can sit back and relax. Can I just show up?" I'm like, yeah, you can show up.
And did you feel pressure? Like, what if you started to like really excel? Like, you really got good at it, but you just didn't want to participate in the was there pressure, or is there maybe not your school, your sensei in particular, but could you see some pressure in saying, hey, you're really good? Because from the school's perspective, they're thinking, look, obviously if we do well in tournaments, if we win tournaments, or if whether it be individual or just as a collective for the school, then that adds to my brand. Because how many martial arts schools you've gone by and you look in the window of the school and they got trophies like
it's funny you said
studied across the school or whatnot, saying, hey, we're really good, look at all the tournaments that we won. So you would think there would be, if you saw a person who really had potential, but they were like, well, I really don't have the money to join the tournament, or I just really don't feel like participating, that there would be some sort of pressure, or at least some some influence to say, hey, we really need you to, you could really do good at this and it'd be good for the school. Have you seen that kind of pressure put on?
Yes and no. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a multiple question answer to this. Okay, so Master Shiro, Sensei Shiro, bless his heart, this guy used to do it for love. He was a hairdresser by trade. So he had always all the money he used to make from school, he would put it back into school, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He owned the property. Everything was on him. And so he didn't really care. He didn't do it for love. He only charged like 40 or $60. I can't remember how much. Great instructor. And if a student couldn't afford class, he was just, don't worry about it, because the money came back to the school, and he
Mhm.
would take care of you, but he would ask you to take care of the school later on when you can. Same thing with tournaments. He says you really want to go, like, you go to him, like, let's say you went up to me, I was like, Pete, I can't afford this time around. Like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. Just
Mhm.
make sure you take care of the school eventually. And
Gotcha.
now with the number game, that's the politics of the martial arts, unfortunately. Numbers win tournaments. So you have a school that has 5 versus the school that has 50. The 50 is going to win. Even the 5 is doing 10 times better. You're doing akatas better, they're fighting better, and they're doing weapons better.
Mhm.
They're going to win because it's politics. So the pressure of you going is the number of the game. There's low pressure telling you, like, come on, dude, you're gonna let us down? What the fuck?
Yeah, I would think so. That'd be,
Yeah,
especially if you're one of the school's better fighters. That
absolutely.
there'd be some pressure to want to, do it for the school or whatnot. But that's interesting though. But at least I'm glad to hear that at least on paper it's optional. Because
Mhm.
again, I would think there'd be a big difference between, again, just doing martial arts for the sake of you want to learn a martial art versus proving you can, win a tournament, or what
Absolutely.
have you. Yeah. So
Tournaments became very political, unfortunately, like any
mhm,
sport. You know what I'm saying? So it's the numbers count in a tournament now. Is it to in 2025? Is it the same? I haven't stepped in a tournament in so many years.
mhm.
I want to say yes, and it's probably worse if I had a guess. Because I remember talking to other instructors, and, like, their schools are small and they're not like this mega, like Tiger Solomons. That's a
Yeah, that's a big franchise. Right.
we call that McDojo.
Yeah.
Get it, McDonald's, McDojo,
Yeah,
get it.
McDojo. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they're going to win most tournaments. And we, as in, during the black belt meetings, and we always bring this up to small schools like myself, like, yo, how do we know this is going to be fair? We don't want the politics. This is for
Right.
the kids.
Well, think about it too is, I mean, obviously if they're enrolling 30, 40 kids in, that's
Mhm.
30 or 40 fees. So again, for the sponsors of the tournament,
Yeah.
those who bring the most cash to the table, I want them coming back every year. So you might give them
Correct.
a bit of an advantage, certainly if it comes to a decision, unless you do a KO or the guy can't continue or something like that, then you may show some favoritism towards the more funded schools, because
Believe it or
again,
not, Paul, and you're gonna be
yeah.
surprised to hear this. In a small, a karate everyday tournament, you're not going to get KO'd. You're gonna get pointed out first.
Mhm.
It's rare someone's knocked out. I mean, in all my tournaments, I have really
So they're not full contact.
now these days it's no contact to the face, they call it, because everybody has a job now these days. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but I mean but even in adult tournaments, there's no contact to face, but still you can still get KO, you get kicked or what have you. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have never
Or
seen anybody get
if
kicked
not
out in a
KO,
Sportplex.
you can't continue. Let's say if you don't get KO, you get a kick. If you get a kick in the bread basket, right, and you can't breathe, or you get a liver shot or something like that. I mean, that's certainly you could very easily end the fight that way as well. I don't mean
Okay,
necessarily
yeah,
getting
that's what I mean.
knocked
Yeah.
out,
I say,
table spot.
bro, I literally, yes, a spin kick right to the solarplex. He was not coming back from that.
Yeah. Once you get hit, once you can't breathe, that's it. I mean,
He was
you're
done.
done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was done because this is during the black belt meeting. This is the funny ones too. You're gonna get a kick out of this. They're saying, okay, no contact to the face, and a guy raised his hand once. He goes, "What about black belts?" And we all laughed at him like, "You're a black belt. If you cannot block your face, you deserve to get knocked the fuck out." Black belts
Right.
are different. That's full contact in black belt division. There are also
Right.
divisions. You have to keep that in mind. There are different
Yeah, for
divisions.
sure.
They're the youth division, and it goes by rank and age. Then the adults, same thing. Then you get to black belt. That's a whole different animal.
Right.
A whole different animal. And it gets pretty. The men's black belt division, it is the most bloodiest division ever.
Right.
The women's are pretty bad too. I saw one woman bit somebody's hand. It was an accident.
Right.
She had mouth guard. Man, I thought the woman in these stitches, she was bleeding like a goddamn goat.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could certainly see it being, certainly the intensity growing up, but again, now with those, more brutal divisions, does the cost go up in terms of the fees or the whatever for
Yeah,
these?
so now the bigger tournaments, like when the World Martial Art Tournament, the World Martial Art Federation was around, how it worked was they did a point system. So you did the small ones, and you earned X amount of points, right? Then you get to the next level, and the price goes up as the tournament is get bigger and bigger and bigger. The World Martial Art Tournament, it cost my parents about believe at the time it was early 2000s. We're talking about in the 300 to 400 range. Now in
Yeah.
today's number, I expected at least $1,000 to enter that tournament.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. And then again, especially if you have to pay for lodging, right? So
Oh yeah, that's
like for
another one, yeah.
not
Travel.
only just for you, but for them, and let's say if they want to come and see you in
Mhm.
a particular tournament or what have you, then
Food is another one there too, because there is
Oh, yeah,
a
sure.
recess in the middle,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the food is expensive. In terms, they're fucking
Oh
raping.
yeah, especially at the tournament itself. Yeah, they want $10 for a hot dog. I mean, it's
Yeah, because the school is running the school who is sponsoring that tournament is running the snacks and the food part of it, the cafe
Mhm.
stuff. All right, so they want to make their money, and so they're going to charge you triple times. Like
Yeah.
I seen hot dogs up to $12 to $15. I'm like, God damn, but this hot dog better be fucking worth it.
No, they're never good. No, it's the worst food. That's why I always, when my daughter ran track and field, for example, I always brought my own food because I was like, I was not either I wasn't going to pay the prices or the food wasn't very good. Because again, they had kids running the concession stands,
Yeah.
so it's not like
I used to
they
tell my
were going
parents always right before we left. We always met at the dojo. So I did a little brief meeting, like we went over everything. I went over the rules with the kids again, and I told parents, "Listen, you have no food. Here's your chance. Stop at Wawa. Stop at a
Yep.
gas station. Stop
Yep.
anywhere. Get some food because you're going to need it. Get drinks. They're not going to tell you cannot bring that in,
right,
because they're renting a gymnasium usually most times.
right.
So
Well, actually, those are worse though. I've seen where they can tell you that you can't bring food in a gymnasium. I've seen where they can do that. The only time they can, if it's like an outdoor track. I haven't, like I said, with track and field, since you're mostly outdoors, they don't have those kind of restrictions. But I've seen like basketball games or
I
whatnot.
never seen it in a
You
karate
trying to bring in
style.
McDonald's or something like that? Yeah,
Yeah.
that sometimes they, because again,
Okay,
they all know
McDonald's is
that
kind of like you shouldn't bring McDonald's at a karate tournament because you're going to cramp up when you're trying to.
I
do
know. I'm
something.
just as an example.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, just bringing in outside food.
No, yeah. So at a karate tournament, maybe it's a little different versus a school event,
right,
because you're renting the facility. You're not. The school is not running the event.
Right.
That's the different. The catch-22.
right. Gotcha. Gonna move to some of these
Yeah, go
here.
ahead.
Just let's get a further breakdown. So again, for some parents, again, you may not have that bread, and also keep in mind, what if you have multiple kids?
It gets
You're
more
gonna have
expensive.
those costs can go up dramatically when you have multiple
Absolutely.
kids involved in different sports and activities. So again, rising costs. Again, for 20% paying well over $1,000 a year and up, and again, that's per child. So again, the costs can really start to add up after a while. Once you do household income, obviously you make more. And again, I don't begrudge anybody if you have the means and the wherewithal to involve your kid at any level. I'm not here to be envious of someone else's worth. And so if you're making that kind of money, yeah, you would expect that more money can go into your kids' activities. But as I said at the beginning of the show, times have changed in that it seems like the more affluent you are, the more access that your kid has to better training, and therefore better access to the better AAU or the the travel teams. You seem to have more access and more opportunities to be seen. So if you want to look at college recruiters or what have you, who's taking a look at your kid. And that's another thing for a lot of those private travel teams, because of all these connections that they have with former professional and sometimes current players. Oftentimes the scouts, they actually manipulate where the scouts go to watch players. You may not necessarily go to the high school to watch a player. You may go to the AAU event, or you may go to the travel team event to watch a player because the guy basically said, look, if you really want to see the best talent here, come here. where scouts used to go to all the high schools in the country and whatnot to see players. Now they said, look, all the top players in the country are going to be at this one event. You don't have to go to all these high schools. Just come to this one event and see all the best players. But like I said earlier, the problem oftentimes with that is, and they're saying this is a big problem with USA basketball, period, even on a professional level. We just saw from the Olympics, the last Olympics, even though Team USA won, it took an incredible effort. Steph Curry, LeBron James, it took the best players playing the best basketball. Kevin Garnett, it took those guys. I mean, Steph Curry went off in the finals game to make sure that they won it against France. But a lot of these foreign teams, they're catching up. France, Canada, Germany, Italy, a lot of these international teams have gotten a lot better, because what they're saying is that a lot of those teams, they focus more on fundamentals, not putting together a superstar roster, but making sure that you're taught the fundamentals of the game, and also these players playing against top competition. So they're saying that's one of the reasons why. And if you look at the NBA now, the top players in the NBA right now, they're all foreign players. You know, Jokic in Denver, and you got Luka, who's playing for the Lakers now, and the Wembanyama, who's playing with the Spurs now. So again, the guy with Milwaukee, Antetokounmpo. It's like all these players, the top players in the NBA now, they're all foreign born. Even the current MVPs from Canada.
It's funny you said that, because in Greek sport, 95% of the players, I don't say 95, I want to say like 75%, excuse me, is foreign players, from basketball to soccer, even polo.
Mm-hmm.
So the sport has evolved so much in Greece too. It's like, and in Greece is a little different because you don't get drafted through high school from college.
Mm-hmm.
You have to you don't play as a team. Your parents pay to go to a facility to play basketball, and you play the different arenas. And most times the arenas are major team. Let's say Olympiacos, for example, you play at the Jets arena, and you play versus the Giants arena, and they have the smaller teams and so on. That's how the scouts pick you up, is watching you actually play with people dropping real money.
Yeah. I mean, it's but you're also playing with players who also are fundamentally sound. So the idea is that better competition. So again, it's not about the money per se. It's making sure that you're getting the coaching that you need in order for you to be the best you can be. But again, that's going to cost some money here. Some additional stats here. Again, depending on your income, as a percentage of your household income. Again, the more you earn, more than likely, the more you're going to kick out. If you talk about by race and ethnicity, again, whites and Latinos pay pretty much the same amount. Black families, again, just due to income disparities, a lot of times don't have as much money. That's why, again, you may spend more on football or basketball, because those are generally cheaper access of entry. But some of these other sports, maybe not as much. Or track and field, that's another big one where a lot of Black families put their kids in, because again, it doesn't cost an arm and a leg in order to be a part of it. So again, just some overall demographics. I think I got a couple more here. So again, just breaking down again those expenses, average per year. Okay, travel and lodging, registrations, lesson and instruction. Again, some of these are cheap, because I know guys who will spend $100 a session to get certain training. If you're in baseball or whatever, or football, especially quarterbacks, paying mad money to get certain instruction in certain things, equipment and uniforms, camps, or athletic schools, and other expenses. Again, $1,500 a year on average. I want to thank Coach, because Coach sent me a lot of these screenshots, so I can add them to the slide. So here again, average cost again, and the costs go up. So again, based on your age, again, the cost of entry gets higher as you go along, because again, more competition, higher fees, bigger tournaments, and other activities. These are things that you have to be mindful of to get into these areas. And this is what I wanted to kind of end with. kind of like where all this goes. So again, as a parent, you really have to be mindful and understanding why is it that you have your kids in these activities? Because anybody who has any ambition to think that their kid is going to be playing, they're going to be the next Michael Jordan or the next top quarterback or whatever. These are sports. So again, high school participants. So just look at baseball, for example. Baseball, 478,451. And this I got from the NCAA website. Okay. So these are the legit numbers. They track this stuff, right? Basically, out of the 400 and almost 500,000 players, less than 40,000, less than 10% play at the collegiate level. It's a very small number. Division 1, which is the elite level, 2.4%. Division 2, 2.4%. Division 3, that's your local Ramapo College. That's your local or TCNJ college. I don't know what schools would be in PA. That would be like a Division 3, Pete. But
Penn State.
no, Penn State's Division 1.
Is it really? I thought it was
Division 3 schools are typically small schools, focus more maybe on academics. They may have some athletic programs, but they just don't have the money to compete with those big schools that have 50, 60,000 students and the games on Sunday have 50,000 people in them and whatnot. These are small institutions. Hofstra University here would be on that level. Again, even at the Division 3 schools, you're talking about 3.2%. Basketball, which is certainly for African Americans, is certainly one of the more popular sports that people enroll their kids into. 1% play at the collegiate level of D1 and D2, just a little bit higher at D3. The sports that really where you have the best access to get recognition is ice hockey and lacrosse, but there's a problem. Those are the most, if you go back to the previous slide, those are the most expensive sports to get your kids into. And not every school has a lacrosse program. Usually those schools are like in Hunterdon County, upper, wealthier areas. Morris County in New Jersey, again, pick your areas, Pete, in PA that, where the more affluent, where the rich people live in your area. If their kids aren't going to a private school, but if they're going to like a very high end public school, that's where you're more than likely going to have ice hockey and lacrosse. Urban schools typically don't have those programs because, again, it's too much money to run them. But if you are able to get your kid into those programs in youth and allow them to go through, and they're able to exceed at the higher levels in high school, then their chances of getting either scholarship money or the ability to play at college level goes up. 13.3% for ice hockey, 14.4% for lacrosse. It is not a poor person sport. Wrestling at the bottom, again, less 3.2% overall of high school wrestlers wrestle at the collegiate level, 1% at Division 1. So
see, here's the thing. I'm looking at the list. There are two sports that I'm not surprised that they're on here, and they're pretty high. Golf is one of them. I hear a lot of parents putting kids in golf now these days, saying, "Oh, my daughter's going to get into golfing." I'm like, I don't think so. It's very hard. And when they're, and this is like average people who are making, the average wage is about 55 to 60,000. I believe is the average right now.
Mhm.
So somebody who's making 55 to 60,000 a year, spending all that money in golfing, jeez,
yeah,
you
and
need a
again,
loan and a half.
will you have what future will you have? Because these numbers I'm showing now, it's the same numbers at the pro level. So you talk about from high school to like high school basketball, from high school basketball to Division I basketball is 1%. And out of the 1%ers that make it at the college level, 1% get to the NBA. So again, your chances of succeeding in sports is very small, which is one of the reasons why I said that while, yes, you can get a lot of benefits out of sports, having a job and learning the value of money and developing a work ethic there is just as important, because that is going to be more so where your future is, not sports. So for these parents who are writing their kids thinking that they're going to, they're going to, you know, uh, have their kid make millions of dollars and they'll be taken care of for the rest of their life, and they think, oh well, I'm investing in my son or my daughter because when they make money, then I'll get any money that we invested, it'll be worth it. And
See, here's
yeah,
the thing.
obviously, but obviously we have people who've done that, but it's a rare club.
Yeah. So with these, well, I'm looking at this list right now. There's a couple of sports that they're not on here. You may consider sports, you may not consider, may not. That's a different conversation for a different show. Snowboarding and skiing, that is a big sport now these days too.
Yeah,
So
but
it's
you don't typically have the idea is like what's offered in college though.
yeah,
You
yeah,
don't
yeah.
you may have like a rec team or something like that, or where you could where they would offer that. But as far as a sponsored sport that's sanctioned by the NCAA, they're not there yet. X Games type of sports or whatever, they're not
No,
there
I'm not
yet.
talking about that. I'm talking about
Yeah.
more like typical skiing, like with it racing, I guess you want to call it.
Yeah.
I know my high school did have it. So, but I'm in a snowing area too, so it's very common up here.
Right.
So,
Right.
maybe that's more an individual sport, so I guess that doesn't count.
Yeah, like I said, NCAA, I mean, there's going to be certain sports that they're going to sponsor. And again, you have to have enough schools that participate in it. So it might be good like in like the Midwest or Colorado, places where you do have snow and access to snow and things of that nature. But will the NCAA sanction those sports? That I'm not sure. I think you have to have stuff. But again, water polo, again, a very expensive sport. How many high school teams have water polo teams? So it's not so again, you're talking about the elite private schools or the high end public schools where people who typically make a lot of money, and they make a lot of money, could just drive through their neighborhoods. And some of these places don't be there after dark. Otherwise, someone like me, I may get pulled over, but that's another story. But it's the same thing for the girls also, because if you look at their side of the ledger, again, small numbers. Your best shot, again, ice hockey. If you play women's ice hockey in high school, again, where you're going to find a program for that? But if you're good, you got a 33% chance of playing at the collegiate level, 10.2% at Division 1, 2.1% at Division 2, and then 21.3% at Division 3. That's your best bet. That and lacrosse, again, another high-end type of sport. Swimming and diving. Again, how many high schools have swim teams, let alone platform or diving teams? It's
Not a lot.
rare. It's for the elites. It's for the well-to-do. It's for the rich schools. So again, that's going to exclude a lot of people out. Yeah.
Because my school wasn't a rich school, and they had, but it was a newer school. My high school that I graduated, because I didn't go only there for a year and a half.
Mhm.
They did have swimming and diving there.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm surprised at how much it is to get into that sport, because you don't need a lot of gear. You just need a bench shoot and call it a day. But
yeah,
the
I think it's the coach. The coaching
oh
is
my God.
big, and obviously the facilities. Like I said, I mean, you may not invest a lot of money personally per se, but then again, there's the travel, because it's not widely available. Like again, how many schools in your district are going to have? You said your high school had it. How many high schools in your district had swimming and diving? And if you don't, then that means you have to pay extra money to travel to these places to compete against other swimming and diving teams.
Yeah.
And so all those costs are going to add up when it comes to training. So I put all this together just to say, again, I am definitely, if your kid has an interest, not only in sports, like I said, my girls primarily, they did dance. I had one who did track for a minute, had another one, she did soccer for a minute. But generally speaking, I think sports is a positive thing. It's an activity to get them physically active. All those things are good and proper. But at the same time, again, you don't have to join a sports team to be active physically. And then second, the costs that are involved for such a limited output. If you have these ideas in your mind, oh man, I just want to just make sure I get my son a scholarship. Well, the money that you spent on the sports for all those years from age 5 to 18, that could have been this college money right there if you were interested in them getting to school. And another thing I said earlier was what I'm concerned about again, the lack of work. Because again, even in these sports, you're in a very controlled environment. But in a work situation, I would make an argument that it's even more challenging on all levels. Mentally, again, you're going to be working with different types of people, your social interaction. And I've seen kids who they their whole high school, and then the parents, they would say, oh, well, they got their whole lives to work. But then the problem is like when they do get out there and see how the world is outside of sports because again, most of these kids are not going to play college ball. And so what kind of kid are you going to have graduating high school and he spent his whole life being in a car or on a bus, playing in a tournament and coming home versus having to deal and interact in the real world? In college, where you have different types of people or whatever, or in the workforce or what have you, is that person going to be adjusted because things aren't going to be necessarily so easy to come to them? In sports, you have a specific skill set that you had to simply to perfect, and you had to do it over and over again. In a work environment, it's a lot more, which is one of the reasons why I insisted that, again, when my daughters turned 16, we told them, y'all going to work because mom and dad are not going to pay for all your expenses. If you want Nike Airs, Air Force Ones, you better get a job. Otherwise, you're gonna wear Skechers, which was the kiss of death. And I was like, oh, Skechers. It's like, no.
Back then, Skechers were the loser shoes.
Yeah. But for them, it was like, no, I am not wearing Skechers. So it's like, well, you better get a job. And I think that has done more for them than just being involved in sports or dance or whatever for the whole time, because it is a bit of a closed off environment. And so, so again, these are things to keep in mind. But again, sports, again, a great tool, but don't be so dependent and reliant on it that you will then negate everything else. And I think with that, I think we can certainly start to wind down the show. I just want to, again, shout out to Coach. Coach provided a lot of this. I had some of these already, but Coach also provided me with some slides, and I know he's working some games tonight. So I'll look forward next week to getting a heads up on how everything went. But certainly, as we said earlier, certainly we want to drop content for the show. We want you guys to be a part of it. So again, nextgentraining101@gmail.com. Make sure that you submit your questions there. As we compile questions, we'll start to build show content. We'd like to have Q&A shows where we deal with your questions directly. So make sure you pass this information on to other people. And if you wouldn't mind, Pete, I know we have a Next Gen Training playlist that has been recently generated. If we can post that in the chat, so that people can take that, watch some of the content that we've done, share that with, especially with parents. Or people if you have young people, young adolescents and teenagers in your life, young persons who are trying to figure some things out, share the playlist with people where they can certainly get some information. Again, we're just giving our advice. We're not experts in anything, but we like to give our advice on certain subjects that's dealing with your physical, your emotional, your intellectual, and hopefully in the future, your spiritual development. And so, so we want to be of service. And so feel free to ask us the questions and we'll do our best to try to answer them. But certainly with that, if you also want to take the deck down, you can do so. But the playlist for the Next Gen Training has been posted. And so make sure that you go through and watch our content. And again, share, like I said, share the content with persons. I think, it'll be a benefit to them. me and Coach, we love doing the show. We love, giving quality information and giving perspective for young people as well as parents to think about as their kids pursue certain endeavors. We encourage participation, but just as with anything, you need to know the cost of things and how things really run, because I've seen a lot of parents get burnt out being on the road. The marriages get strained because, again, you guys are on the road all weekend. You're not spending time together and whatnot. And it's all about chasing your kid all over the country, pursuing, I guess, their dreams, so to speak. But again, are those dreams at the end of the day? Your responsibility as a parent is to have a fully functioning adult. So I get certainly wanting to be supportive of your kids, but what are you really trying to build, or who the person that you're trying to build? Because I've also seen with a lot of these kids, a lot of these kids I see in these kind of privileged spots, not the best character in the world. I'll be honest. A lot of spoiled brats, quite frankly, because everything is so controlled and everything is about them and everything's about, I got to get to this or that and I got to get here, and there's a lack of appreciation sometimes for for the sacrifices that oftentimes parents had to do in order to get their kids to participate in these events. And so again, what type of child are you developing? What type of adult are you building if you give them sort of this privileged environment? They want something, you just buy it for them because, they're playing sports, they don't have time to work. So again, if they want the PlayStation or whatever, did they do anything to earn it besides just playing basketball? So again, these are things that as parents, I think you have to look at the whole person, their education and their athletics, except for that 1% that can potentially play at an upper level. You got to make sure that they're ready for the future. And I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of kids who had the privilege to play sports at the highest levels all the way up through, but an injury and blew out a knee or some other injury that ended their sports career. And then you have to ask the question, what do they have at the end of the day? And how much money did you invest in that particular activity only for it to come crashing down? And where are your kids? So again, you still have to be a parent. You still have to apply balance and make sure these kids are equipped for the future. So I think that's all I really want to share tonight, Pete. Certainly any closing thoughts. And I want to also thank David. I know he had to leave a while ago, but I want to thank him for stepping in last minute because I know Coach was running late for the show. But I certainly want to thank David for stopping in.
David did a good job.
Well.
So shout out to David. You don't want to put your kids into a situation that is a pipe dream. Unfortunately, it's 1% that becomes a professional. It's not a lot.
No, it's less than. It's actually 1/1000. Because again, it's 1% that go from high school to college, and then it's another 1% that goes from college to the professional.
Yeah.
So it's less than, it's 1% of 1%.
And then on top of that, after they have to see if they pass their rookie year and so on. I know a bunch of players that actually play professionally and they never made it past their rookie year. They got cut.
Yeah.
Like The Rock is a great example. He tried football. It wasn't his thing. So you don't want a pipe dream. Ground them. It's good to have them in sports, a little discipline. I'm not denying that. But don't put their hopes so high. And when they crash, everything crashes. That's all I have. Do a quick schedule update too, also as we're at it. So tomorrow the guys are Wally and Dave are going to be going over who is the Empire of the Anime. Good luck on that one, guys. You're going to need it. And this show I've been looking for a while. I think you're going to enjoy this one really much. Is what if Yoda fought Anakin on Mustafar? That is going to be a interesting conversation. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, no, for sure. Anything in Star Wars, you can never go wrong with. So I'm always looking forward to that. Now, conversely, are we going to say that Obi-Wan fought the Emperor? I mean, Palpatine?
Yes.
Or are we just switch? So we just switching the the fighters. Gotcha.
Correct. Yeah. And we have a call so this Sunday on the Gray Area.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
guys, this is your time. Take your shots at us. You guys always are keyboard warriors. This is a chance to actually speak your mind. And we're off Monday, but we're going to be back on Tuesday with You're Not Good Enough. Just marinate that, guys. And next week, what you guys are doing, what schedule says, or are you changing it up again?
We'll probably change up again. I mean, if we have a follow-up, because again, I never did get coaches' input, certainly on this show. And certainly I wouldn't mind even doing maybe a part 2. We can kind of rehash and review what we talked about, because I really want to get his perspective on some of this content as well. So, you know, and the fact that he's actually doing it. So the ability to you know, talk about it from his perspective as a coach in the thick of it, from a coach's perspective, I would certainly look forward to. But we'll talk about that as far as you know, how to nail that one down.
All right, cool. So, anything else before we go?
No, I'm good. Again, thanks always for the opportunity. Thanks you guys for hanging out with us. And again, make sure you share the content. Looking forward to what you guys have to say.
Guys, as always, stay fresh, stay safe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.